It's the second day of 2025. It's Thursday, the 2nd of January 2025. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. How are we gonna just trying to find the volume for the music here to turn it down. So this morning, folks, we did our kickoff episode on the Freedom Fighter Radio for 2025. As usual, we are going to try and make it more consistent. If we do audio only podcasts, it wouldn't be requiring so much editing except um, for the marketing materials, the one that we post on social media. But at least here on live, I'm supposed to be live on YouTube, BitChute, and Odyssey as well. But anybody who is part of our community and you are able to tune in on our YouTube. I can't even remember which particular YouTube channel. Okay, I find it. It's on Freedom Fighter Radio America. I can see that we are live there too right now. So I'm gonna mute that and monitor that it is working. Well, maybe before I mute it, let me listen. Okay. Oh yeah, it is working. It is working. So we are both successfully on Rumble, YouTube, and locals so far, but it's always a struggle to get it on Odyssey and BitChute on the live. Folks, there's a new campaign on Rumble. If we are able to get at least, we can, for this new year, if we're able to muster up at least 100 live viewers on every episode, the minimum. And we're not, that is not such a big number, but that will activate our campaigns on Rumble Studio. We can actually put in interstitial ads here that they provide the script, and although they don't provide the graphics, there are websites where I can just grab some of the graphics for some of the products. I'll tell you some of the products that are available for promotion during our live cast. Let me see. Oh, I was just here. Okay, so there is something that's called 1775 coffee, 1775coffee.com. There's also a campaign for Truth Social. There's a campaign for Be Naked. Let me see. So in today's society, it's tough to be a man in a world dominated by overly masculine liberal women. That's just not how it's meant to be. So this is a Be Naked campaign at benaked.com. Go to benaked.com code studio and get 15% off today. So I think this is for low testosterone kind of products. Anyways, there's a number of products here. If we can muster up at least 100 live viewers every single episode, then we will be able to activate this. We used to make those numbers. Um, Unfortunately, it's not only on, not all 100 live viewers was on Rumble, but I think since we're using Rumble Studio, I think they will account for the other channels where we are broadcasting as well. So hopefully that is accounted for, because when we used to be able to go live um, on Facebook and other channels, then it's more than 100 live viewers who listens to us every episode. Um, but we need to get back to those levels, and with your help, if we get back to those levels, then we will be able to activate many of these built-in campaigns on Rumble Studio, which are they already sort of like approach advertisers. They already approach well, and many of these brands are part of the mega. American MAGA movement and worldwide freedomized companies that it's preset here. I don't need to approach many of these companies myself. Rumble Studio have already pre-done it for us. All we need to do is muster up at least 100 live viewers from all across our platform. So we are on BitChute, we are on Odyssey. Yeah, to be honest, we're having a problem launching the live of Odyssey and BitChute, but we are live on locals, Rumble, and YouTube right now. YouTube is not really. We don't really have a lot of built-in audience on YouTube um, at the moment. But with your help, maybe some of you have to go and listen on YouTube. I want to start promoting our YouTube on the Facebook groups and Facebook pages. Well, we cannot launch any more lives on Facebook. Anyways, today's topic, this particular segment's topic is technocracy is the end game. Picking up from where we left off this morning, I was um, I was talking about that how we are on a crossroads in 2025. There are so many promising bright future prospect for bright future for all of us freedomizers in in the coming year. But there are also a lot of concerns, and I do think there's a war brewing. And this war that is brewing in our society, it's both kinetic and, if I may say, we can call it a subliminal war. There are so many things that's happening in our society. Even just on the first day of 2025, there's already a few Islamic terrorist attack that happened in the United States. But prior to that, I was oblivious to this news item actually because I do not go with the wind. I do not fly with the wind of the news cycle. Apparently, um, uh, in the month of December, just in the month of December alone, before the New Year's, there were at least six major airlines that have plummeted, crashed on the ground, or one is suspected to have been shut down by Russian weapons. But there were six all over the world, six major airlines that crashed. And how is it related to many of these drone appearing in the skies, New Jersey skies, and so people say that this is happening worldwide. Actually, it's not just in New Jersey, and I do believe that I've been seeing a lot of this footage more than ever on X. A lot of people are uploading their captured videos of many of these unexplained flying objects in the skies. Many do not even look like hardware. They don't look like real hardware kind of aircrafts or craft. Some look like plasma, and there's so many of those right now. And listening to Timothy Alberino, he was saying that a lot of these that are being posted on X are from many years ago. I don't know about that. Well, again, I'm relatively new in the UFO space. The community who have firsthand experience themselves of being eyewitnesses or being abducted. These are in the thousands of people who claim to have been abducted or have an encounter with a UFO. Um, I'm not one of those who like to dismiss people even before I listen to the matter. And the Bible says it's foolishness to reject an argument even before hearing the matter. Right? It's foolishness to do that. So there are lawsuits and there are court cases, and there are affiants or plaintiffs that were actually awarded by the courts um, damages, compensation for their damages, those who have encountered this phenomenon, the unidentified flying object phenomenon. And because I do believe that many of them are military industrial complex, human designed, human engineered um, UFOs. Because there are many accounts in the UFO lore, many stories where eyewitnesses or those who they call themselves experiencers. Experiencers are people who have encountered a sighting of a UFO, or someone who have encountered what we call in the UFO lore as alien abduction or alien encounter. Some of them have physical injuries, and some of them who have witnessed this, they see aircrafts or spacecraft. You know, um, what's the difference? Aircraft, spacecraft. How would you know that they go out in space? I think some of these early UFO members of the community, they assume from the 50s, the 30s, when they started documenting some of these aerial phenomena that they witness in our skies, earthly skies. I think some of the people in the early members of the early community, they are the one who labeled many of these aerial phenomena as outer space aliens. You know, why there's no reason to assume that they're coming from outer space. Like they could very well be, but that was the in collusion with H.G. Wells and many of these New World Order science fiction propagandists in the early days of Hollywood. Hollywood has been a tool, very, very much an effective tool in pushing this narrative that many of these aerial phenomenon that we witness in the sky are outer space aliens. Those are just assumptions. There's really no reason to assume that they're coming from outer space. There is a documentary that I've been watching during the Christmas break of a certain researcher that have captured in on video many of these aerial phenomenons, and they look like plasmoids or some kind of a almost behaving like amoeba when you observe amoeba in the ocean or in on earth in some of the ponds or just on a petri dish. Some of those that are being witnessed in the sky, they call plasmoids or like a ball of light or some sort of an orb. When they behave in morphing or transforming, or some of them look like real amoeba or fungi or but except it's in a large scale and it's in the sky. So that is one of the theories that I entertain in my mind as a possibility of some of these air phenomena. We probably don't know everything that happens on Earth. These are Earth phenomenon that, for some reason, some people in the early days, in the 30s, and before it became mainstream knowledge that there's something happening in the sky, some of them have named it arbitrarily. Just name it, oh, UFO, outer space aliens. Any sightings of UFO is assumed to be outer space aliens. It is possible that these are just a natural phenomenon in our sky that has everything to do with nature. That's one possibility. The other possibility is these are entities, but they are earthlings. They are not extraterrestrials. They were here even before human civilization has spread all over the planet. They have been here, and that does not contradict. biblical narratives. Anyways, the point I brought that up is there are so many strange things that has been happening in our society this past few weeks, just before the New Year's, and we know 2025 could be the year where we see even more crazy stuff. First of all, let's this I always I'm notorious to have been known to be stepping ahead of myself or running ahead of the pre-thought of what needs to be shared today. Today, I want to talk about technocracy, and technocracy is the entire theme of the Freedom Fighter Radio. Everything leads back to technocracy, and I feel like, yeah, some people are probably tired of hearing me talk about technocracy, but we don't have much time, folks. I feel like we need to talk about this because it's not being talked enough in many of conservative media, right? I feel like we kind of lost Alex Jones as well as our fellow freedom fighter in exposing this, because he seemed to have embraced Elon Musk now, one of the biggest archetype technocrat, the arch technocrat in the world. There's no bigger, in my opinion, there's no bigger technocrat than that of Elon Musk. And everybody who came along with him and came on board the Trump train. This morning I was talking about how I think the technocrats realized that it is impossible to stop train, the the Trump train on its tracks. It's impossible. It's a unstoppable train, and they're trying to put an immovable object in front of this unstoppable force. And Donald Trump, a MAGA movement, is the unstoppable force that we have witnessed, and they knew it. I think they recognized that second Trump presidency is an unstoppable force. So many of these technocrats came on board the Trump train. I think that's what happened. But 2025, let's talk a little bit about what is the significance of this year. It's, it's no different from many other years, except we are in the it's been 25 years since we had that Y2K scare, right? Remember? When we were crossing over from the 1900s, 1999, the year after 1999 is the year 2000. And now we're here. We're in the year 2000. And the science fiction genre have predicted so many futuristic and dystopian narratives about the 2000s, the millennia, the new millennia. But from a biblical perspective, 2025 simply means it's been 2025 years since Jesus Christ was born on earth, right? So whether you're atheist or whether you are Hindu or Muslim, whether you are, agnostic, following the Gregorian calendar, and I'm not a big fan of the Gregorian calendar. However, that is the mainstream calendar that many of us in Western societies are following right now. It's the Gregorian calendar. When you quote the year 220, 2025, right? What you're actually saying, because 2025 means 2025 AD or Anno Domini, which is on the other side of BC. BC simply means before Christ. But Anno Domini, right? Every time you say, hey, Happy New Year, Happy 2025, or you're going about your business and you're saying, we have an appointment in January 15, 2025 AD, right? It's a true as AD. We're all on the AD part of our human history. Every time you say 2025, you are acknowledging the existence of Christ because the year 2025 in the Masoretic, no, sorry, not Masoretic, the Gregorian calendar, you're simply saying that the 2025 AD means the year of the Lord 2025. That's what it means exactly. I actually had the history here of Anno Domini that I opened last night for today's show, and then for some reason it got closed. So let me open that again. Right. What does Anno Domini means? Anno Domini means in the year of the Lord, and we abbreviate that as AD, 2025 AD. AD means Anno Domini, and simply you're saying in the year of the Lord. That's what Anno Domini means. Hi, so let's read up a little bit about Anno Domini. The terms Anno Domini AD and before Christ BC are used when designating years in the Gregorian and Julian calendars. The term Anno Domini is medieval Latin and it means in the year of the Lord, but is often presented using our Lord instead of the Lord. So it's in the year of our Lord instead of in the year of the Lord. Taken from the full original phrase Anno Domini Nostri Jesu Christi, which translate in the year of the Lord Jesus Christ. The form BC is specific to English, and equivalent abbreviations are used in other languages. The Latin form rarely used in English is ante Christum natum, ACN, or ante Christum, AC. This calendar era takes as its epoch the traditionally reckoned year of the conception of birth of Jesus. Years AD are counted forward since the epoch, and years BC are counted backwards from the epoch. There's no year zero in the scheme. Thus, the year AD 1 immediately follows the year 1 BC. This dating system was devised in 525 by Dionysius Exiguus, but was widely used until the ninth century. Modern scholars believe that the actual date of the birth of Jesus was about 5 BC. Terminology that is viewed by some as being more neutral and inclusive of non Christian people is to call this the Common Era, abbreviated as CE, with the precedence years referred to as before the Common Era BCE. Astronomical year numbering and ISO 8601 avoid words or abbreviation related to Christianity, but use the same numbers for AD years but not for BC years in the case of astronomical years. 1 BC is year 045 BC year minus 44. Folks, so it is just, whether you're Christian listener to the Freedom Fighter Radio or agnostic or atheist or Hindu or Muslim or Jew, the Gregorian calendar, although I agree that we should acknowledge, even in the secular world, that the year of the Lord, when we start counting the years, we base it on the year of the Lord, base it on after the birth of Jesus Christ for AD, and before the birth of Jesus Christ for BC. I totally agree with that, but I am not a big fan of the Gregorian calendar. I think there is some secular infiltration of the Gregorian calendar that makes us lose count accurately of the sign of the time according to prophetic signs. Well, I'm not going to that right now, but it is important to acknowledge that it's been 2025 years ago since Jesus Christ was born, walked the face of the earth, and died on the cross 2025 years ago. And ironically, many of the earliest account for UFO sightings in paintings and prehistoric writings, a lot of researchers were referring to same 2025 um, AD. 2025 years ago is when they start documenting many of these aerial phenomenons. Now, if we come back to Earth for a little bit before we continue on, the World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab propaganda of the Great Reset, they have targeted this to launch for the year 2030. So it is astonishing also to that I think we have to acknowledge that 5 years came by so fast, folks. Even though after being locked down almost 3 solid years in Canada, because Canada, Toronto, Ontario, Canada is one of the longest lockdowns during the COVID era. Um, we are the longest lockdown uh, major city or Western city in the Western hemisphere or Western societies. 5 years have gone by so quick. Well, it is the beginning of the fifth year. Technically, the COVID era didn't really start in 2019. It started on 2020. It was discovered, or the fear porn was launched in 2019. Oh, my camera just died here. I have to give me a second, folks. All right. So yeah, the fear porn started in 2019, but all the lockdowns and the actual mandates and all of the actual COVID era started mostly the year 2020. And now we are here in 2025. It is the beginning of the fifth year, and time flew. But many of us in the freedom community discovered that for the first time, those who were not paying attention on the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 propaganda of the New World Order prior to the COVID era, many of the members of our freedom community was discovering the first time the blatant globalist agenda of the World Economic Forum, the United Nations 2030 agenda, the Great Reset, and all that. A lot of people are very new to that, or awakened to that because of the COVID era, right? But when when the World Economic Forum is both fear porn, propaganda, and also greed. Remember the two forces in nature, and the two forces that they use for gaslighting humanity is the force of greed and the force of fear. When people started waking up on the the fear agenda of the World Economic Forum on the Great Reset, I think a lot of people waking up to it in the year 2020 during the first year of the COVID era. And can you believe it? It's after this year is over, we will be 5 years away from their target date of 2030 of the Great Reset. The Great Reset, you will own nothing and be happy about it. That became a very popular mantra. Now, many of us in the freedom community have exposed the evil, the darkness of that, even though they're using the same propaganda to lure people into that kind of mentality. Um, that was only 4 years ago when we exposed that, or many people got exposed to it. But now we're halfway across the decade. We're just 5 years away from their target date of the Great Reset. 2030 is their target date. And and everybody in the freedom community was very up in arms and very upset to have discovered this Great Reset propaganda by Klaus Schwab and um, and the World Economic Forum. But since everything opened up already, I think a lot of people have laid down their a lot of people have laid down their guards again, went back to sleep, and people think, oh, this is not probably not happening as much anymore because we are winning some of the fights. People are thinking, you know what, we're winning a lot of the fights. People are uh, the MAGA movement is thriving. We are able to put Donald Donald Trump back to the White House. We're almost there, getting rid of Justin Trudeau in Canada and replacing him with a conservative politician. So a lot of people are laying down their guards. They feel like, hey, there's no worry anymore. But I think that's part of the psyop. It's part of the psyop for people to lay down their guards and not be on guard against the breach of our freedom anymore. It's part of the psyop, part of the conditioning so that people will not put up a fight. That's the very definition of gaslighting, in my opinion. When people are just triggered one way or the other, it's called SR conditioning in Pavlov's classical conditioning, where pain and pleasure. When there's so much pain, people are up in arms against the tyrants. When there's a lot of pleasure, people lay down their guards and they actually sometimes the pleasure part is is making people want to embrace their captors. Stockholm syndrome kind of. Well, either way, some people embrace the tyrants when we are under the pain episode, and some people fight against the tyrants when we are in the pain episode. But some people find it an opportunistic, and I think we should find it a great opportunity that now the tyrants uh, are pretending to not be hurling a lot of painful assault against our freedom. They are, but it looks like they're not as bad as during the COVID era, right? But they are actually assaulting our freedoms relentlessly on a daily basis, even now. But there are freedomizers who, those who pay attention, they feel, and we know that, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to not stop speaking out and waking more people up. This is a great opportunity for us to wake more people up and bring the message across because it's a little less silencing during this sort of like peacetime season. But there are others in this gaslighting in this gaslighting part of the session. Some people embrace the tyrants even more because everything seems to be okay, back to normal, right? That's the very dynamic and structure of people who abduct children for child trafficking, for example. You know, just imagine if you know, go back to your youth days, go back when you were kids. And we've seen this in many documentaries and many uh, testimony accounts of children who have been trafficked and then they escape when they were adults already, right? the dynamics, the structure usually of human traffickers, especially children. They would gaslight them and they would condition them for compliance by combining pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure. So sometimes they'll be locked down in a dark dungeon under a basement with very little provision. It might be too cold down there, it might be too hot, maybe it's too dark, maybe there's some rodents in there and some spiders to scare them. But then from time to time, they will bring them up and give them delicious meals, let them watch TV a little bit, let them play. So they go back and forth, pain and pleasure, pain and pleasure, pain and pleasure to break the child's spirit so that the child become more compliant. And with this kind of conditioning, sometimes the children find these captors as their saviors, as their friends, as their lovers, as their parents, and they succumb to the gaslighting by a symptom called the Stockholm syndrome, right? That's the very nature of gaslighting. And those who have laid down their guards already and went back to sleep, maybe you guys haven't realized that this is exactly what the government is doing to us. They allow a little bit of freedoms. They allow a little bit of back to quote unquote normalcy so that you don't have to put up a fight. You don't have to be so adamant instead in standing for your rights and freedom. Because remember during those heavy days of the lockdowns, and people are saying, you know, give us our freedoms back. There are members of the mass formation society who would actually go along with the tyrants and they would even push back and say, hey, what freedoms have you lost? What freedoms have you lost? Right? Because they couldn't see that they lost a lot of freedoms by, being mandated shots, being mandated masks, social distancing, lockdown, and all of these measures that is against their basic human rights. But those who have succumbed and embraced the tyrants, their captors, those who have succumbed to the Stockholm syndrome, they will even uh, vilify those who are fighting for freedom, and they would say the misguided question. You see this so much during the COVID lockdowns. You see this from people who have complied and conformed. They throw this question on social media: what freedoms have you lost? Can you tell me? Because they couldn't see it. They couldn't see that they lost so much freedom, and they think that because they complied, they didn't lose any freedom, right? But just going along so that you will not be inflicted with pain, they couldn't grasp the concept. They couldn't grasp the truth that they already lost their freedom when they complied right there. They didn't fight for their basic human rights to choose for themselves what would get you know into their bloodstream, choose for themselves whether they want to stay indoors or go outdoors. Remember the heavy lockdowns also happened during harsh winter, which gives the psychological conditioning that everybody is complying when it was not compliance. It's just people are naturally staying indoors in harsh winter, right? But they time some of the heaviest lockdown mandates during the heaviest winter, the harshest winter. It's all about gaslighting. It's all about a psyop, because that's part of the psyop when people are locking themselves indoor or staying indoor, which they prior to the COVID era, people have been doing that for millennia. That during the winter time, people stay indoors more. Mostly, there are those who are crazy about the outdoors, even during the harsh, bitter cold. They love and they thrive going outside. But the vast majority of, especially um, northern hemisphere dwellers, such as us Canadians, we prefer to stay indoor during the harshest uh, time of winter, right? But they would say, "Oh, we have 100% compliance. Everybody is taking the shots. Everybody is locking down and complying. Why are you not complying? What freedoms have you lost?" No, not everybody is complying. Everybody do not want to comply. Most people do not want to comply. Most people didn't want to take the shots. But they would say, "Oh, we got 80, 90% compliance in Canada." Well, you threaten them to lose their jobs if they don't comply, right? The same kind of paradigm is coming even closer because those beta tests, those days during the COVID lockdowns, those are basically beta testing on compliance. Nothing to do with a virus, nothing to do with sickness, nothing to do to protect people's health. It's all about beta testing. Will society comply? Because the next lockdowns will be due to social credit. People need to comply and keep their social credit on an acceptable level, or else you'll not be able to open your door to go outside. You might not even be able to open your fridge doors. You might not be able to get into your car, your AI car. Most cars will be replaced by AI cars. See what we mistakenly call electric cars today, EV cars, electric vehicles, that was being marketed to society in the name of um, the environmental propaganda, has nothing to do with propaganda. Has nothing to do with the environment. It has everything to do with control. If we can get the vast majority of society get into a driverless, steering wheel less, pedal less cars, well, they are like elevators, right? They're simply like elevators. If you cannot drive the car, you don't call it a car. It's pretty much a capsule. But if they can get 80% or deceive people that most of society are in compliance to create that mass formation, that bad bandwagon mentality that, hey, everybody has to take the chip into their brain, the neural links, everybody has to take the mark of the beast, or else you won't be able to go to the store, or if you eat too much meat this week, you won't be able to buy tickets to the train. You won't be able to go to that concert or attend your office party. You're not even able to go to work. Well, you know what? They might actually eliminate work altogether because they know that a lot of humans find meaning for their lives connected to their work. And so by creating this um, stress or this the lack of meaning making, like Dr. Matthias Desmond was talking about, some of the components that create mass formation. Number one is the lack of meaning making. So taking away people's jobs, and that's the reason I always keep on saying on this show that do not find the meaning of and the purpose of your life based on your job, based on your occupation, based on your designation. You are more than your jobs. You are more than your employment, and people find meaning and identity only based on what they do. But the tyrants, the technocrats, the social engineers know exactly full well that that is the case. So when they take away the jobs, that will create the the lack of meaning making, like Dr. Matthias Desmet was talking about. And that again will allow and cater in the mass formation that will bring more compliance, that will bring a totalitarian control of society. We are not too far away, folks. So, you know, people might be so sick and tired of listening to podcasters who talk about the end game, the technocracy. But I feel like we're not talking about it enough. Actually, we do not have enough time unless we wake up more members of society so that we can get that critical mass of pushing back against this technocratic agenda, the end game. It's like that unstoppable force, that unstoppable force. So as you can see, the unstoppable force of the Trump train has been boarded on by arch technocrats. There are so many technocrats that has surrounded Donald Trump now, and I think the second Trump presidency could be defined by a technocratic hijack. That's what I feel about the second Trump presidency. We still need to continue to pray for Donald Trump so that he would really uh, stand on his feet and do not allow himself to um, just don't allow himself to be manipulated by all these technocrats who have came on board trying to hijack the Trump train. That he would be relentless, be strong leader within his camp. Because for many, for the people, by the people, and of the people kind of leader, just like Donald Trump, the only way they can undermine his resolve is to do it from within, an inside job. So there are many more that I want to talk about this. Just running out of time now because I have to prepare and pick up the boss wife from work very soon as well. But there are many more that I want to talk about this. And for now, I would recommend for adult listeners to the Freedom Fighter Radio, check out this new craze on stream called Squid Games. Because I was trying to stop my daughter from getting into that. She been, it has been marketed on her Instagram account. Some of her friends have been following the Squid Game. I thought I was losing that battle. I was trying to stop her from watching it. But I thought the best thing I can do, since I couldn't stop her and she will feel so um, left behind by some of her friends who have been following the Squid Game, I said, okay, if you're gonna watch it, I'll watch it with you so I can guide you. And then I it turned out that it's nothing more gory and violent than the Hunger Games, and she already read all the Hunger Game books and seen all the Hunger Game series. But there are many freedom fighting lessons to be learned from some of these um, Hunger Game type lore, and that is something I want to talk to you about. Because if you are of a 13-year-old just like yours truly, and you cannot stop them from watching, I would recommend, actually, if you're an adult, if you're a parent, that you watch it before your children watch it, and you will realize that there are so many things about it that reflects our real life in our society that is under heavy technocracy, under heavy tyranny. There's so much lessons to be learned from it, and I will dissect it for you in the next coming episode. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing our Freedom Fighter Radio. Please subscribe to our Getter, our Getter, our Gab, and our Truth Social. If if you're listening to this on post, I put 1 minute reels and stories on Facebook from this podcast, just to get our Facebook friends to come over and join us on our other free speech platforms. If you are one of those, then thank you for coming in, and please join us on Rumble, on BitChute, and Odyssey. But for social media, please join us at Getter, Truth, and Gab. We are also on MeWe and others, but those are small channels at the moment. But the one that is thriving right now, which is a non-Facebook social media, is our Getter. Come to our Getter. I'll put the link on the description below. Thank you again for joining in. I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm your host, Ordinary Joe, right here on Freedom Fighter Radio, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye.